What is the best CMS platform to use in 2026? CMS platforms come in all shapes and prices. Trying to decide which to use for your next blog, portfolio, or business website is just as hard as trying to pick which AI model to use. Is it this one, or maybe these? I'm going to create a comparison of each one. What are their strengths, their weaknesses, and how much should I pay to get a free version, a light version, or a fully unlocked version with all the bells and whistles? Firstly, let's take a look at what a CMS is. At its core, a CMS, or a content management system, is just a database for your website. Instead of hard-coding content into every single page and storing it inside of the HTML code, you store it separately and pull it in dynamically. This structure is simple and helps you create things like collections, which are basically tables. Blog posts or team members or projects can be collections. Each one of the records inside of the collections are things like one blog post or one team member or one project. And each one of these records have fields like titles or images or dates or rich text. These can now reference other collections as well. This means that a web designer doesn't have to create 50 pages for 50 separate blog posts. They can create one dynamic page to pull them all in from a CMS and just focus on one single page design. With this in mind, let's take a look at some of the features that CMSs need to compare against and what CMS platforms there are. There are three main categories that I want to point out, and under each category, there are some top contenders. The first category is the all-in-one builder. These are CMSs that handle everything from bundling, hosting, design, CMS, and publishing. Some of the most popular examples in this category include Wix Studio, Framer, Webflow, and Squarespace. Next up is the dedicated e-commerce CMS, and one really popular example of this is Shopify. It's essentially a purpose-built CMS for selling products online with a built-in payment processor. The last category is the more self-hosted DIY solutions. These are often free software, but they do require your own hosting, and while they give you full control and flexibility, especially if you're a developer, they do require a lot more uptake as well as security and maintenance. Examples in this category are companies like Hostinger, which allow you to build your own CMS on their platform, as well as things like WordPress or Joomla, or even just building on top of Next.js with your own tools and databases like MongoDB. When deciding what sort of CMS to choose, there's a number of factors we're going to look at in this video and compare against the top contenders. Firstly, we want to know exactly how many collections you get access to through a CMS. Next are the records themselves. How many items do you get access to when you create a collection? For example, blog posts might need thousands of entries, whereas something like team members might just need a dozen or so. Next is the pricing. What does it cost to unlock different quotas inside of the CMS? Because normally you have to pay more to get access to additional records or additional CMS collections. Finally, what is it actually like using the CMS provider you're using? Each one functions a little bit different. Some are easier to use, some are a little bit more complicated. So having an idea of what works for you is just as important. So let's have a look at our very first one. Let's take a look at Webflow. It's a no-code platform that essentially is made for developers, and it is built from the ground up to allow you to still do drag and drop in a way that makes it easy to move elements like divs onto the page. The underlying framework itself reminds me of how actual HTML code is written. This does mean that you need to have a grasp of how to set colors, do margins, padding, how to do proper nesting and have containers inside of the visual editor, because otherwise if you're building the no-code websites, you're going to get lost. So it can have a definite complexity for the no-code component. But let's have a look at how the CMS aspect of it works. At the very top of the website, you have this button here for CMS. And when you head here, you can create your own CMS collections. Using the CMS feature, I've created a few different types of collections. These CMS collections are essentially for things like team members or blogs. And here on the designer view, I can actually go to a CMS collection page and view what it looks like. Here you can pass in things like titles or descriptions and link them directly to the data from the CMS collection right here. And this is essentially how the CMS works inside of Webflow. Using Webflow as your main CMS does come with some limitations though. One of these are that you can only ever have 2 sites on the free plan. This means that if you want to create another site, it's going to request for you to upgrade to a paid plan. I don't remember if this was always the case, but it is a little bit of a hindrance to entry, and it also caps you from building sites. For example, if I wanted to create a site for a client right now, I would immediately start paying for hosting in order to get it onto my account. Another new limitation is the fact that you're only limited to 2 pages. I swear there used to be more pages available because I used to have 3 pages, including a contact page, but now on the free plan, you're only allowed to create these 2, and any additional ones will require you to pay as well. The only way to get around this is to upgrade to a business account. However, that still comes with its own limitations. In terms of the pricing plans and what you actually get with Webflow, you get a number of options here. Under the free plan, as I mentioned earlier, you get 2 pages, 20 collection items, and 50 actual items under each one of those collections. Now that's really not much. If you move up to the basic plan, then there are no CMS features. You actually have to go to a CMS plan in order to get still 20 collections, but now you are capped at 2,000 CMS entries. Finally, under the business plan, you definitely get more CMS items, up to 10,000 or even 20,000, depending on what you wish to pay. But it is a lot more of a cost, and there is also still a limit to things like bandwidth. What I've done is gone ahead inside of Figma and started copying over the main details that you want to know in terms of CMS for this platform, including the prices, limitations, and we'll compare these against other CMS providers soon. Our next CMS tool is called Wix Studio, and it's also my own personal preference since I've been using it for the last number of years. It's made for designers, developers, and specifically agencies, and it's made in such a way that it is more click, drag, and drop in a similar way to how Figma works, where you have full creativity over the page, but you can still do things like responsive design, customize elements, and even have really cool CMS things such as headless CMS, allowing you to create collections on the site itself and then reuse them in something like Next.js. But let's actually jump into it to have a look at how CMS works inside of Wix Studio. I'm logged into the main dashboard, and this is where I get to see all my sites. You might notice that I have a lot more here, and that's because even on the free plan, you can kind of have as many drafts as you want, and you're not just limited to 1 or 2. Wix Studio's visual editor is a little bit more like Figma. This means that you can create sections and then simply drag and drop elements onto the page and move them into the exact position that you want. And in this way, they're actually docked to the section that they're on. As a quick example, I'm just going to add in a small blog post with an example image, title, description, and button. I can move them anywhere in this section, and they just adhere to the exact position I put them in. I can dock them in by a pixel amount or a percentage, so no matter what screen size they're on, they'll always look like they're in the right position. This freedom of design is one of the things I really like about it because it allows you to craft website designs even if you don't know how the underlying HTML or CSS structure should work, because you're designing the visual look very much like a no-code website should be, rather than trying to adhere to the classical coding structure that HTML, divs, and CSS normally forces you to use. With that said, let's have a look at how the actual CMS elements of Wix Studio works. Now, if you head on the left here under the columns, you'll have things called collections. Collections are the aspect of the CMS that essentially creates the different tables and rows that you can use in a database. Wix Studio does have an AI collections creator, so I'm just going to use that to create and populate some of these collections with raw data, and we can then later use this on the website to showcase some of the features and how CMS actually works with Wix Studio. Here I've got the collection being called CMS features. So this is just features that you would expect to see inside of a CMS. And now I want to populate this page with that CMS data. I'm going to head over to Quick Add, and I'm going to use a component here called a repeater. It repeats a very similar structure across many rows or columns with data that you give it. Now in this case, the data that I'm going to connect it to is the CMS data itself. So here I can simply select Add Dataset. I can select that CMS features dataset I created earlier, and now that dataset is connected to the repeater. You can see that all the entries, which were 5 of them, are here, and now I need to attach different variables as components. I'll attach the title here and I'll link it to the feature name. You'll see that this actually updates all the title blocks here with the content from that database itself, which is pretty simple to utilize. I can now customize this text block very similar to how I've been customizing earlier designs by simply dragging it into position and customizing the design of the text itself. And that's essentially how the CMS works in Wix Studio. I can also drag in other things like a paragraph here and link it to the description, make the size a little bit smaller and reposition it so that we can see the content here. And you could do something like showcasing team members from your business or, for example, blog posts in a similar fashion. Now, this is just to present them on a single page, but another useful thing that you can do inside of CMS is to create dynamic pages. In order to do that, we're going to head to the Pages section here at the very top of the website and select to create a dynamic page. It's going to ask me which CMS I want to utilize for it, which I'll select as the CMS features collection I created earlier. And this creates a page structure which showcases one individual row or record from that CMS as a page structure itself. I can customize how this page structure looks like, and here are all the layers for that. But this is the essential way that it works, very similar to other CMS providers. I can always head back to the CMS section to customize the data or even see exactly where it's linked on different pages of the website. One of the things I like about Wix Studio is that I can actually head to the main dashboard section of the website where you manage all the things like analytics, blog posts, groups, permissions, and have a CMS section here where I can see all my collections as well as how many items I've utilized so far. Additionally, Wix Studio's CMS has a lot of business logic built in. Not only can I just head over here to update stuff directly in row or extend out the view and update all the rows in one, I also have the ability to finite edit the permissions and roles for different people to manage the CMS data through this advanced permission section over here in settings. This allows me to make sure that only the correct people modify and edit certain content, such as view, add, update, or delete. Additionally, at any point in time, I can import and export any of the CMS entries itself through CSVs, which means that my data is never totally locked into the provider itself, which always provides a bit of ease of mind. Another feature that Wix Studio allows for is headless CMS, allowing me to use the CMS collections outside of the Wix Studio visual editor so I can build in my own project, even if it's on my local computer, through an API and a headless client just over here. This means that Wix kind of gives you this all-in-one environment, which is like an integrated full-stack solution for both front-end and back-end. It also means that I don't need to worry about specific back-end services that are often provided by competitors like Airtable or Webflow because it's all built into the platform. Now let's have a review of how Wix Studio does its pricing and comparing the features and functionality it provides at each price point. Unlike other providers, Wix Studio is focused in more on agencies. So rather than limit the amount of sites or, for example, collections you have, the limitations are more on data and a number of people working on a single project. This gives me the freedom to make hundreds of sites, drafts, and examples to showcase to clients without having to worry about being bottlenecked or starting to pay fees for things that I'm not actually using. On top of that, I can jump into any site and create as many pages as I want without limitation as well. The cheapest plan is basic, starting at $18 a month, and then it moves up to standard at $29, plus at $47, and elite at $179. Let me update the Figma cheat sheet here with Wix Studio. One of the interesting things about it is that even on the free plan, you get 10,000 rows of CMS data, which is one of the benefits that I haven't seen any other provider do. Additionally, you also get unlimited tables, pages, and essentially sites with up to 999 sites available on every plan. And finally, the Elite plan allows you to do up to 10 million rows of CMS data, which is also a little bit of an exclusive thing that only Wix Studio does. This is because Wix Studio's architecture is made to scale up to over 100 gigabytes worth of items. Unlike Webflow, which uses SQLite, and it's essentially made only for about 10 gigabyte databases. Framer is the next CMS no-code builder that's an all-in-one we're going to take a look at. As a tool for designing websites, it operates somewhere between Wix Studio and Webflow, where you still have a little bit of that zooming canvas that you get in Figma, but you have more strict layering and nesting of components, very similar to Webflow. It also has a CMS built in, which you can utilize to create dynamic pages and dynamic content on static pages too. Once you log in, you get to view most of the sites you're working on. Here I've got a few I've been looking at, and I've got this example SaaS website design, which we're going to use as an example to check out how the CMS operates. As you can see, the zoom in and out functionality does look very similar to how Figma allows you to browse through a canvas. And then if you want to edit different types of pages or contents, you have layers and pages here on the left-hand side. If you want to add content, you've got a quick add option at the very top here with some pre-made sections, menus, as well as components such as images you can drag into the canvas. The canvas actually is aligned to how the layering is set up in the design. So if you do want to add components in, you have to adhere to that strict layering structure that normally is required when you're doing HTML or CSS content. Let me pull in this example for a section of a landing page. It's just a couple of bits of text, and I can make those changes directly in the text. And then on the right hand side inspector, I have additional things I can modify, such as opacity or font size or font color. All of these can be customized depending on how you utilize, and this is just a summary of CSS in a more visual manner to edit what's going on behind the scenes. Now let's take a look at the content management system inside of Framer. You access it by selecting the CMS or collections tool at the very top of the website, and it takes you to this section here where I can create a collection. In this case, I'm going to create one called blog posts and add a few examples in here as rows or items. They get created in a draft, so I then have to publish each one of them, and this makes sure that they're viewable on the page itself. You might notice that there's only a text and description field. I have to edit and add in additional fields if I want to utilize them, such as here I might add in a field for images, and this makes sure that each one of these CMS records also have the ability to upload an image alongside that record itself. I'm just going to throw in a quick image here as an example, and now let's have a look at how we can add these to an actual page. Heading back here, I'm just going to create a new section where I'm going to add this static section with all the blog post titles that I've currently created. On the left quick add menu, I'll head to collections and pull in this blog post collection. It's just populated it with the two that I've had here with the image and title, but not the description. I can add more details in here, or I can even customize the CMS entry itself. If I change the CMS entry in the design view, it updates in the CMS view and vice versa as well, which makes it nice and easy to modify at any point in time. Additionally, if I want to create a dynamic page, I can head over here to new CMS page and create an index page. And this is why it's called an index page, because it's just an index of all those CMS items. If I want to actually browse in deeper, I'll need to create a specific view of the page itself. And to do this, I'm going to head over and create a details page. This is the view of that specific record, including its title, description, and image. So let's compare how Framer's pricing is in comparison to some of the other CMS options. There are 3 price points here: Basic, Pro, and Scale, which come with different types of features enabled as well as limitations. Let's have a look at these in detail. For the basic plan, you get to have a site with up to 30 pages. The Pro version is up to 150 pages, and the Scale is at 300 pages with an additional $26 per 100 pages. For the CMSs and CMS items, there's a lot less than most of the other examples, with 1,000 items for the basic plan and 2,500 for the Pro. The scaled version comes at 10,000 items, and you can scale for more, but you do have to pay for each 10,000 block. There's a bunch of other features and tools that you get at different price points, but these aren't as useful as the main pricing and CMS entries, so let's actually compare these now in Figma. Framer sits in a position between Webflow and Wix Studio. Its pricing is a little bit more expensive, with the plans being $20, $60, and $132. And with this comes the ability to have unlimited sites on the free tier, with up to 1,000 pages and 1,000 rows in the CMS. While this is a lot more than the Webflow's 50 rows that is provided, it isn't as much as the 10,000 that's available through Wix Studio. If you're publishing a website, this scales up to just 30 pages on the basic plan, plan with 1,000 rows and 1 CMS table. And on the Pro plan, you can upgrade this to 150 pages, 10 CMS collections, and 2,500 rows or records. Finally, you have the scaled version, which upgrades this to a max of 300 pages with 20 CMS tables and 10,000 rows. I assume this can continue to scale, but these are the price points that are provided on the website's pricing page. Now that we have a good comparison of all the CMS platforms and how they compare in terms of price and what they provide in terms of features, I think it's good to answer some common questions like, what is the best CMS framework for designers? Or what is the best CMS framework for developers or agencies? This is a nuanced question, and I think it depends on each person. For me personally, I love designing websites in Figma first, and the easiest way for me to replicate those designs one-to-one is actually inside of Wix Studio, simply because the design architecture between the two systems is so familiar and similar. I often like to work in a free plan. I don't want to have to immediately pay for a website that I'm just considering to build. So the flexibility of being able to create drafts inside of Framer and Wix Studio is definitely a bonus, especially with the fact that Webflow now limits a lot of the things you can do if you're on free mode. It feels almost as if they want to get you paying as soon as possible. Maybe that's something they should change. But when it comes to CMS usage, then you can definitely compare against my cheat sheet, which I'll link in the description below, to have a look at which sort of provider gives you the best plan, the best limits, as well as the best kind of features and functionality on whatever kind of website you use. I'll link that in the description below, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video on a CMS comparison and found it useful. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.